About that. Don't be so pushy.
Good evening, everyone. Why don't we get underway with the Marin Energy Authority meeting for Thursday, August 2nd. Welcome. Hope everyone's enjoying the summer so far. Item 1, board announcements. Any announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 2, public open time. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening. We had a number of people at the CPUC today and a lot of support for Marin's energy efficiency program. We also asked for a hold on the item because we wanted to get 40% instead of 15%. And it was an issue that was kind of like, I didn't totally understand how it was working because the way this process works at the commission, it's in documents that are not labeled, and I've been so busy I did not know this was coming down the pike. And
Barbara, if I can interrupt for 1 second, are you talking about the agenda, the agendized item, though, right?
No, I'm talking about the 2012.
You're talking about
efficiency
2012.
application. Yeah,
Okay.
which was going to be, there was a resolution today which would have only given us 15%. I mean, it turned out to be all we had asked for, and I didn't realize that. But, you know, I feel like the staff really, you know, basically told our folks that we could only get that much, but that was based on something called statewide and regional programs that we would not be allowed to get that money. But there is no such thing as a regional energy efficiency program right now. And it's never appeared in the documents. And so the staff basically came up with a brand new definition of regional and said, oh, okay, you don't get all that 25% of the money. And I'm like, no, we should be able to get our 40%. I mean, I think we should be getting all of it, and that's another issue. But anyway, in this process, we had an alert going out, and we had a bunch of people who came, but we were working with the Sierra Club Energy Committee, and I just want to let people know that a very strange thing happened. It turned out that the Energy Committee listserv has had President Peavy's advisor on it for years. We didn't know that. And so all of our alerts and all of our commentary on MEA and CCAs in general have been going straight to the commissioner. And the feedback, I mean, we didn't realize it until yesterday, and I looked back at this guy's email, Scott Murdishaw, and it turned out that he had said that several times, but it was so kind of not what anybody was expecting that we didn't register that he was on the list. And he was just making comments, but he would say, I worked with President Peavy to do this. So like, one of the weird things was that in the last day, he must have sent 10 emails, discussing this with us on the list. So we probably got more time from the commissioner's office than I had ever gotten from Peavy's office. And it is interesting that he was that, concerned about the Bay chapter, what we were doing and about the MEA's program. So obviously this, this issue went straight to Mr. Peavy, and somebody ended up holding it. We had asked for a hold so that we could, go back to the staff and say, hey, we don't really think this is, fair to, take out this money for regional programs that don't exist. So anyway, we do have that time between now and the 23rd, and I hope that that's, the agency will support, getting more money instead of less.
So it is on hold?
It was happening, yes, and it wasn't held, up until the meeting, it was not on the hold list, but, in the midst of the meeting, President Peavy said, it's on the hold list. So either he did it or somebody, one of the other commissioners put it on, up there, and I really don't know who it was yet, but that was a very interesting day, a couple of days.
All right, well, thanks, Barbara. Don, do you want to comment on that for a minute?
Yeah, I was just going to report that the item was held this morning. Obviously, we're disappointed. This is a program that we were hoping to launch in 2012. We were hoping it would launch in April. We worked very hard with the Energy Division staff to revise the proposal. Your board approved a revised proposal on June 20th, which was submitted for approval through this draft resolution process. So we were, of course, very hopeful that it would be approved today. We had an implementation meeting planned for tomorrow to begin our EE program, but unfortunately we won't be able to do that now. We're hopeful that the approval will occur on August 23rd at this time. We encourage folks to come out and support the plan. We think it's important that we get our program started, and we do plan to grow the program after it starts. The dollar allocation that's currently proposed in the draft resolution is over $400,000, and so it will enable us to start a very good program which only has a few months left in the year. And we'll be discussing later on in the agenda today the more robust program that we'll be launching in the coming 2-year cycle. I can also mention that it was Commissioner Simon's office that requested the hold on the item. We're not sure what the reasoning was. We heard there was a last-minute request this morning from an individual who we're not familiar with. So we're hoping to find out more about that, and I'm hopeful that this will get passed through on August 23rd.
Okay. Any more members of the public? Commissioner Reserve. Kiki?
Good evening, Kiki Laporta. This may be bringing coals to Newcastle, but I was asked by Strategic Energy Innovations to let people know in the municipal, government, and institutional sectors in Marin about the seed grant funding for solar inspection, assessment, and installation. So I'm letting you know, and they're very interested in contacting any agencies that, schools as well, to go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, San Rafael is utilizing that, and it looks like a very promising grant program. Stan?
Hi, Stan Sparrow from General. I went to the solar conference a couple weeks ago, and I want to invite you guys there. It had one of the largest conferences to hit San Francisco, and maybe 25,000, 30,000 people, and why I thought Marin Clean Energy would be good there is all the largest solar companies in the world were represented there, and a lot of amazing information. Now, the big news is that the price of solar panels has now crossed the threshold that it will be cheaper than PG&E, and less than $1 a watt for the panels themselves. And then they had a big sale, and I got sent you an email, 80 cents per watt for Taiwan solar panels. So they're really, really coming down in price. And a lot of new technologies that was really amazing. And I wanted to send some of that information to you that would really help Marin Clean Energy of some of the solar technology that's coming up for some arrays in Marin. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other public comment? Okay, item 3, report from Executive Officer. Don.
Great. So in the interest of keeping this meeting as short as possible, I know we were planning not to have an August meeting, and I apologize in advance. I know folks are eager to get home and watch the Olympics, so I will keep this very short. I first wanted to introduce Ashley, who's joined us as an intern this summer and has been helping with so many things. Welcome, Ashley. We're really excited to have you with us. You all might be hearing from Ashley from time to time with requests and meeting coordination and that sort of thing. I also wanted to just, as far as logistics go, we no longer need a bathroom key when we're here on the first floor of the evening. So no need to grab a key there. You can just help yourself, and we don't have to go through that anymore. I think that may not apply in the daytime, but anyway. And then there are 2 other kind of business items.
Is that the start of the energy efficiency program?
Yes, indeed. I wanted to report on two business items. One is that we are working with PG&E regarding the PCI checks that will be issued to all customers it's supposed to be at the end of August. And there's been some back and forth about what's the best way to apply those credits to customers. And at this time, it looks like the approach that's going to be used is mailing checks to the customers for the credit. This is to avoid impacts on the bill that could occur if the charges are netted against MEA charges. There's PG&E has a difficulty separating charges on the bill. So mailing checks is likely what's going to happen, and I just wanted you all to be aware of that in case you get questions from constituents when those checks come out. They're supposed to be issued by the end of August, although I wouldn't be surprised if it took longer than that, given where they are in the process right now. The next thing I wanted to let board members know about, because there's been a lot of kind of high-level dialogue about this. We've been working with PG&E really for more than 2 years to try and change the way that charges are presented on the bill for customers, particularly on the PG&E breakdown of charges. The generation or the unbundled charges really need to be shown on that PG&E page. What happens now is that the bundled rate is shown on the PG&E bill for the breakdown, and so customers are not able to recalculate their bill correctly, and it appears that they're being double charged for generation. This is a concern that we raised with PG&E a couple of years ago, and we've been working with them to achieve a solution that we had been assured would be completed through this bill redesign that's underway right now. PG&E filed an advice letter on June 1st with a very good-looking bill that had the bundled charges, or the unbundled charges showing up for the CCA customer, and a number of other improvements that make the bill a lot clearer and easier for the customer to read. We supported that advice letter. We thought it looked great. But in a meeting with PG&E a week ago, we were told that they actually won't be able to implement that change, and it looks like the bundle charges are going to be showing up on the CCA customer's bill at the end of this bill redesign. We're concerned because the bill redesign only happens once in a blue moon, and so it's very important that this change be implemented now. So we are working with a number of folks to try and make sure that that change gets rolled into this, and we may be calling on some of you to participate in meetings with commissioners' offices on this topic. And that is it for my report.
What's PG&E's rationale for not making the change?
It's technically too difficult. It would add an additional 3 months to the timeline for them, and at this point they feel that the timeline is too essential, and they are unable to complete it from a technical perspective in the way that they expected to previously.
Any questions for Don? Members of the public?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think, can you give us a couple of talking points, because as 95,000 of us are now enrolled in Marin Energy Authority and our program, Marin Clean Energy, it seems that us as the electeds will get lots of questions from people about bills, and I can't tell you honestly the last time I looked at my PG&E bill, because I'm not responsible for that in my household, but I'm going to be. But I'm just responsible for paying it. But I don't have that anymore since I'm a member of MCE. But my point is that I just think that we're, just as we've had to be ready to answer questions about the whole opt-out process, being able to decipher the PG&E bill and understanding exactly what you're talking about, the unbundled versus bundled on the page, can you just make sure I can do that, because I know I get a lot of calls, and I just want to be able to respond intelligently about that. Would be great. Thank you.
Sure, we'd be happy to do that. And one thing that I think will be helpful, and JP can send to you, is a link to a place on our website that actually shows a bill with circles around certain places explaining what the different charges are.
Thank you. I just want to be up to speed on that. Thank you.
I know 2 people who told me that their bills doubled. So if this is what they're seeing, this really could be serious. one of the things that is happening supposedly in the larger energy efficiency proceedings, the applications for the utilities have just been filed. And I was looking through the billing issue is gonna come up there also, because they're, the commission has ordered them to provide for something called on-bill repayment financing. And they're gonna have to do a massive redo of their billing in order to accommodate that. They're trying to postpone everything as long as they can, but, they periodically, they're notorious for having bad bills, and I mean, the MEA problems are ridiculous. So, and they spend an enormous amount of money. So it looks like this is gonna come through. I don't know whether the bill redesign that you're talking about is gonna happen now, and then they're gonna do another one this winter. That would be interesting if that's the case.
I'm talking about the one that's planned for this winter.
The one that's planned for this winter. Okay, well, then, there's no excuse for this not being in it as far as I'm concerned. And I think the purpose of it is to make people think their bills have doubled. I mean, I think that's, proactive on PG&E's part, actually.
All right, Don, well, why don't you keep us posted on those proceedings, anything we can do to help on that? Sounds like a critical issue. Okay, item 4, consent calendar. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it.
We do have one change on the minutes.
Okay.
We have a reference to Director Martin instead of Director Small in the minutes. So we apologize for that error. We'll fix that.
Okay, so we'll note that amendment. Can I have a motion for approval?
Move acceptance.
Second.
Got a motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carried.
Can I vote yes on everything except the minutes?
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
Okay, that'll be noted. Okay, item 5, a very important item, very exciting item that's coming back to us. MEA Energy Efficiency Program Implementation Plan for the 2013-14 timeframe.
Great. So we're really excited about this item. I'm going to start and give some introduction to this, and then I'm also going to invite Jeff Rouser, who is in the audience and has been assisting us with some of the development of this plan. But just to kick it off here, we've been discussing energy efficiency really since we launched MEA, and the reason why is that it's a way to achieve greater greenhouse gas reductions and decrease energy usage, and it provides benefits also to customers and being able to save money at the same time that they're saving energy and helping the environment. We have offered a couple of things already along the lines of energy efficiency. We've offered energy efficiency rebates for customers that are participating in the Energy Upgrade California program, and we'd like to do more of that. We've been interested in receiving an allocation of energy efficiency dollars that are already being collected from our customers as a non-bypassable charge, and use them to have a local program that's really tailored to local needs and that's able to achieve some results in our community. So in January of this year, we brought a plan forward to the board for approval, which included a number of components. One of the components was a multifamily program, and some of the other components were stripped out of that plan initially, but they've been brought back into this the plan that we're going to be discussing today. The legislative mandate is important to spend a minute on, because there are actually 2 pieces of the statute that provide a different path for how CCA can apply for energy efficiency funds. The first path was created through AB 117, which is the piece of legislation that enabled CCA programs in California. And the reference is 381.1. This is Public Utilities Code 381.1, subsection A. And this permits CCA programs to apply to become administrators of cost-effective energy efficiency programs. And the word apply is important. It means that we actually need to submit an application to the commission. It's then subject to protest by other parties, a lot of back and forth, and then the commission will vote on whether to approve the plan or not. It's a cumbersome process, but a more time-consuming process, but it does allow us to offer energy efficiency programs to anyone in our jurisdiction, even if they're not a customer of Marin Clean Energy. It also even allows us to offer programs outside of our jurisdiction. That's something that we're not currently interested in doing, but it's interesting to note that that's available to us. The second course of action that is defined in the statute is Public Utilities Code 381.1, Section E and F. These were added on through SB 790, which is a piece of legislation that MEA supported during the last legislative cycle and just went into effect in January of this year. This code reference allows CCAs to elect to become administrators of energy efficiency programs. Electing to become an administrator of an EE program is a much simpler process. It simply requires submitting a board-approved plan to the CPUC for approval, and all that is needed for approval is a resolution to be voted on by the commission. That is precisely the action that was planned to happen today. And so these two paths are important to keep in mind because they explain the two different types of plans that our board has approved. The first plan that we approved was for 2012, and this plan was using subsection E and F whereby we would elect to administer an EE program only for Marin Clean Energy customers. That's the plan that is currently pending before the commission and will hopefully be voted on on August 23rd. We're not going to spend any more time talking about that plan tonight, except I will say it's really just focused on multifamily programs.
Do you want to at least address the one issue that was raised tonight about funding level on that plan?
Sure, I can address that, and I'll address that right now. There's a lot of back and forth with the Energy Division and PG&E, and a lot of analysis of data looking at our usage, our overall customer usage, to determine what would be the fair allocation of dollars for this 2012 program. It was very difficult for the CPUC Energy Division to get the data that they needed from PG&E, and it was very difficult for them to use that data to develop an exact percentage breakdown. They provided us with numbers based on the analysis of their legal division and their technical folks, kind of based on their interpretation of the statute, but there was not a formal process that defined how much CCAs should be able to receive on a going forward basis. It was really a process that was being viewed as an initial start to the program. And so we conformed to what the Energy Division requested in hopes that we could launch a program in 2012. If we had pushed back hard on the numbers that were being provided to us and requested more, it would have caused a good deal of delay, and we would not have been able to launch a program in 2012. We also felt that the dollar allocation was a good fit with an initial start of a program for multifamily. So that just gives a little background on the process. I think the last thing I'll say on that front, though, is that there is certainly a great opportunity to spend a lot more time talking about this with the CPUC and the other interested parties to determine what the fair allocation of dollars should be. There has been we are not agreeing to any formal process that would be in place on a going forward basis. We're simply looking to start a program, and we are hopeful that after that has occurred and we have a strong program that we can point to that has some results, that we will then be in a great position to go through the analytical process and possibly uncover additional dollars that we should have access to. So now I'm going to shift gears and talk about the plan that we submitted for 2013-2014, and that's really the focus of the presentation today. So this plan was submitted under the more time-consuming path, and this is under PU Code 381.1A, which allows us to apply to become administrators of EE programs for all customers in our jurisdiction. And as I said, we could apply for customers beyond our jurisdiction, but we're not doing that. But we are interested in serving customers who may have opted out of the Marine Clean Energy Program, but could still be served by our energy efficiency programs. Next slide. Oh, can you go back one? You can't. I want to talk for a moment about the Julie Fitch ruling on slide 4. So there was a ruling issued on June 20th that directed CCAs who are interested in receiving funding for 2013-2014 to apply through a process that had been defined for regional energy networks, which was kind of a process set up for local governments to apply to administer EE programs. In this ruling, she requested that proposals be submitted by July 16th, so there was a very short turnaround in developing this proposal and getting it submitted on time. As a result, we were unable to bring a final version of the plan to your board prior to submittal, and that's why we're spending some time tonight to go through the plan with you and explain what it includes. And I think we can skip through slide 5. This just gives some detail on what the CPUC requires. But I'd like to get into talking about our, let's see, slide 6, we just as a recap for the 2012 EE funding period, we are, that proposal was submitted a while back, and I think we can move on to slide 7. So now we can get into the nuts and bolts of what is included in the plan. This is the exciting part. So we have 2 different elements in the plan, the direct service element and the financing element. And this may sound familiar because we talked about doing this way back in February, but it's become a lot more fleshed out and has a lot more detail. So the direct service element includes a multifamily subprogram where we would be providing services in multifamily facilities, doing audits and retrofits, and proposing measures that could be modified to achieve energy efficiency in those facilities. Then we also have a focus for small commercial, where we're really looking at restaurants and professional buildings and small retail. And we're working with some vendors that have a lot of expertise in those areas. And we also have a lot of partners that have been expressed an interest and worked with us in developing the proposal. And I think that will help assure a really robust implementation process. We're really engaged with the community, working with local workforce training programs, working with folks at the Marin City Community Development Corporation who have a lot of direct connections with folks that may end up being served by these programs. We're really excited about that. And then moving on to the single family component, here we're actually going to get into detail on this one because we have some interesting graphics here, but here we want to provide some software, web-based tools, and also some community, really grassroots-based tools that encourage behavior change in single-family homes. And this really will bolster the Energy Upgrade California program that already exists. It will also bolster the Marin County program that exists, the Energy Watch program, and it will really be looking at residential customers to encourage them to take action and reduce the amount of energy that they consume, help them save money, and also help them work towards the results that they have in their mind, whether it be greenhouse gas reduction, or cost savings, or comfort, making their house more comfortable. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. The second element is the financing element, and this financing element really is a method to help the direct service element components succeed and be able to be financed. So what's being contemplated here is an on-bill repayment program, and we'd be doing that by placing charges on our bill to help customers pay off the cost of the upfront cost of energy efficiency upgrades. And then the other program listed here is a standard offer pilot program. And, this would be less hands-on, but would be operated similar to a feed-in tariff program, where we put a price out there saying, hey, we're going to buy energy efficiency from a vendor, and they bid into us. And then they actually implement, and once they've achieved the savings, then we can cover the cost once they deliver those to us. So that's kind of an overview of the program. You can move on to slide 8. And I'll just make a couple of comments about these programs. The multifamily program is really targeting an underserved market sector, and that's important to the commission. I think it's also important to our board. As I mentioned, we'll be collaborating with a number of local partner organizations, and if you have an opportunity to flip through the EE plan, I apologize, it's over 100 pages, but there is some great information there about the partners that we'll be working with, and I won't go into it now because it would actually take quite a bit of time, but we have, in many of these subsections of this plan, we have a list of no less than 20 partners that are really interested in working with us and helping to spread the word about this program. The small commercial program is a multi-measure program. We'll be looking at doing multiple things at one time when we go into these units. Looking at HVAC, looking at windows, insulation, light bulbs, and water conservation. It's been important to the CPUC, and we're very aligned on this front that we'd like to look at water measures at the same time that we're looking at energy measures. And we're really going to work to try to target high energy use segments here, including restaurants, retail, and professional services, neither of which, I think both the small commercial and the multifamily, is really an underserved segment of the population as far as energy efficiency goes. We've really spent most of our efforts in Marin County over the last 10 years focusing on public buildings and government facilities and schools. So getting into these sectors is really exciting. Then on to slide 9, a little bit more on the single family program. Really here targeting behavior changes and appliance upgrades using education and outreach tools. Jeff is going to spend a little more time talking about this. He has a lot of experience with the program that they've been piloting and operating up in Sonoma County. And it's really, they're doing a great job up there. It's really exciting. So I'm going to turn it over to you in just a minute, Jeff. The last thing I'll say is that in the financing element, the focus on bill repayment, we think will be a great way to help, once we come up with a list of measures that a home or business could choose to implement, they'll actually have an option to cover the cost if they don't want to pay the upfront cost themselves. So we're excited about having that as an option for customers. It just provides another choice if folks want to go that route. So we can move on to the next slide. And Jeff, if you'd like to come up here and sit or stand at the podium, whatever you're more comfortable with.
You can do it either way. So just a little bit more than what Don was saying. One of the areas, one of the sub-programs which we're going to be focusing on at MEA with the energy efficiency program is single family. And for single family, we're doing something that really hasn't been done yet. Is that the commission's really pointing to as something they desire to do in the state, and we're going to pilot more, and that's helping people change their behavior, and also and by changing their behavior, they can reduce the electrical consumption, which retrofits, changing the building show has an effect on it. But studies show, and a pretty deep study in Sonoma County, that that's only 35% of the problem. The other 65% can be solved through behavior. And so what MEA is going to do is utilize technology that's been piloted up in Sonoma County and refine it and make it work down here and with MEA. And what it is, we call it utility demand reduction, because it's not just energy, but it's also water. And the combination of water and energy savings measures to accomplish that. So what this technology does is there's really three parts of it that you can see up on the screen. And the first part is what's called My Energy Use. And what it is going to enable, through a secure sign-in, consumers are going to be able to see their energy use, and that's going to be pre-populated with property characteristic data that we get from tax assessment data and other climate data sources. And they'll be able to go into that, and they'll be able to update that default information if they want very quickly. And it's going to look at things in their energy use, like the number of people in their home, how they use it in their home, appliance, what their situation is with appliances, cooling and heating equipment, whether they have solar or not. So they're going to answer those questions, and very quickly from that, they're going to get what's called an action plan. And the action plan is a list of priorities that are based on your personal situation and your desires and your preferences. But the priorities can be based on return on investment for measures taken. So what that means is perhaps behavior elements like maximizing the use of your dryer loads and turning off your lights, things like that obviously get a very high return on investment with very little or no cost. All the way down to changing solar, which is much more expensive, but in many cases you can get a big payback. And so what this tool is, it helps optimize all that, and it spits out this list of priorities based on your situation. And your situation may be, your focus may not be utility demand reduction. It may be, it's utility demand reduction, but it might not be economics. It might be information in terms of, you want to reduce carbon, that might be your focus. You might be more interested in health and comfort, which when you make these enhancements, that obviously helps. So this whole program, a combination of the outreach programs and the technology is really geared to get people to better understand in a fun way how they can change their behavior. And then the last part is my projects, and what my projects is through this process, you want to stay engaged with your customer. And with existing programs and projects that are out there today in energy efficiency, they're going out there, they're maybe doing retrofits and getting financing for that, and then you're done with that customer. And what this will do is it'll still help stay engaged with the customer, so you can continually offer different services and value-added services for that customer. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
With regard to the My Energy Use phase of it, doesn't that require a lot of the smart outlets and the smart
Smart meters.
the accessories that actually talk to the smart meter? I mean, I understood that you have special plugs that you plug your stove into, or you plug your mixer in, that will in some way, otherwise you can't tell that it's the washing machine or the dryer that's using electricity.
Right.
So there's a whole interface here, isn't there?
And we can talk about this all day, but what you're doing is, that's exactly where this program's going, right? I mean, most people don't have a combination of the appliances and the smart meters in place today to do what you're saying,
Yeah.
but this technology will support that. So you actually get full, real reads of how your equipment and your appliances are consuming, and your lights are consuming energy, and you can immediately adjust to that. And part of what this program is going to do in the future is have a monitoring capability, through a third-party application, so you can do exactly that. That's a great question.
I think we have another question over here.
Yeah, I've got a definitional question. Your presentation has been predicated on making references to changing behavior. And I think it would be helpful, certainly for me and probably for the people who are looking at this, we hope they are on TV at some point, to define what you're talking about. What kind of behavior to begin with, and changing to what kind of behavior, so that we've got more definition in terms of what the discussion is. Generally, yes, obviously, what's connoted is some sort of more efficient behavior that uses less energy. But I think if you could talk a little bit more and fill in that conclusory term with some actual examples of what you're talking about, it'd be better.
And I'll give more. I gave one, and that was maximizing your loads in your laundry. Another is maximizing your loads for dishwashing. Another is adjusting your thermostat when you're at home and not at home. Same with your lighting. So those are examples of behavior. There's more.
Okay.
Does that?
Yeah, that's better.
Yes, sorry.
Follow-on question. How will the consumer measure what they're doing by way of efficiency in terms of dollars? Is there There'll be a website or someplace where they go and they can actually convert that into, I save this many kilowatt, whatever it is, and I save this much money because, you know, people
That's
are
very
very
good.
well.
Yeah, I mean, the algorithm, the calculator behind this program actually cranks out, and I'm not the person who developed it, millions of calculations, I'm told, which really look at all the different factors locally here in Marin. So, you know, and apply those to the different measures that are selected or proposed in your action plan. Does that answer your question?
The answer is yes.
And it also, it's not just the cost, but also the benefits for the savings. And those benefits go back to California standard databases, like the DEER database, for instance, which has standard savings for different types of measures.
So you can find it.
And all that is in detail in the plan, all the minutia, if you care to look at it. Okay, so this is just a slide of the user interface, and I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but this shows you different views and and I mentioned different people have different preferences. Your preference might be economics, so you might want to reduce flat out. You just want to get the best return on investment for your measures. It may be health and comfort. People don't recognize that they could be much more comfortable in their home without increasing their utility bills. It could be green factors, you know, GHG, reduction in carbon. A lot of people are interested in that. Or it could be a combination of all of those. So this tool enables you to see these different views of actions based on what your preferences are. And this is just the energy use input form, which I already described that. That's different ways that you use energy within your house for appliances, for equipment, how many people are in your home, you know, how you set your temperatures, the age of your house, and a lot of this, again, is pre-populated with default information, and then somebody can go in and adjust those if they want to refine them. That's it. Any questions on it?
Can you explain the time of use for the TV? That's a real important one for the whole thing. The time of use, the metering.
Yeah, well, that gets back into what we were talking about earlier, and the question earlier about when you say time of use, you're saying time of use per measure?
For billing purposes, the peak time of noon till 6 or 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
The rate
Yes.
is.
Yeah, the tiers,
more
reflecting the
than-
tier structure. And these algorithms and calculation reflect the 5-tier structure for PG&E.
We've actually already begun looking at plugging in our rate structure for our customers into the algorithms that they've developed in Sonoma County, because of course our rate structure is a bit different, and the tiering doesn't apply on our side of the bill. So we're starting to swap data to make sure that we have the right information. There's also some adjustments that need to be made for net energy metering customers of Marin Clean Energy. So that will be included, but what's really interesting about the capability is that the customer class and the customer rates is actually part of the calculations that happen with any change that you make. The rate structure that you are already under will be applied and will spit out the likely savings for any measure. So time of use certainly is one thing that would be included if you're a time of use customer.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Dawn, are you gonna?
Yeah,
finish up on that?
just a few more things here. We've listed here some of the program goals, and I think these are useful in your discussions with other folks in the community about why this program is important. You know, we really think increasing access to programs by hard-to-reach customers is a key impact that we're going to be able to achieve. Identifying segmented concentrations of customers is another area that I think will help the program be successful. We're kind of latching on to certain groups that we think we can serve in a similar way and get them engaged. The social marketing techniques, I think, are really exciting and have a lot of potential for impact, haven't been used by a lot of the existing utilities, but where they have been used, they've been extremely successful. We've learned a lot from what's happened in Sonoma thus far on that front. And then being able to collaborate with our local community organizations is really exciting as well, because we can tap into resources that are already being spent and leverage those to make our program really effective. The next slide here gives you a sense of the overall costs and outcomes. And so you'll see here that our TRC, or total resource cost, comes in at 1.44. This exceeds the CPUC standard, so we're excited about that. And the PAC, the program administrator cost, comes in at 2.14. This is also a good metric. This is a programmatic, an overall programmatic score. We also have calculated TRC and PAC for each sub-program of the program, the overall plan. We can answer questions about that if folks are interested, but this is the metric that the CPUC and other parties often look at to say, well, gosh, how successful is your program? How much money are you spending on it, and how much kilowatt-hour savings is coming out based on the money that we're putting in?
And just to mention, greater than 1 is what the requirement is. So.
The total program budget is just over $4 million, and that would be spread over a 2-year period. The next 2 slides give you a breakdown of the budget and the savings. You can see how much is being spent in each category. You can see some dollars have been allocated to incentives, direct installs. So these are dollars that would flow directly to the customer to encourage them to make changes. Other portions of the funds would go towards education and training, marketing and outreach. And then on the next slide, we have a breakdown by program. So you can see how much is allocated for each of the sub-programs, and then what the related kilowatt-hour savings would be, and then kilowatt and capacity savings would be. We've also included therms here because we'll be implementing multi-measure programs that look at achieving gas savings, water savings, as well as electricity savings. So with that, are there any questions on the plan?
Correct.
Is there it's a pretty impressive program. Is there a particular staff member that's going to be the energy efficiency czar of the Marine Clean Energy Program? This is what they're going to, is that you, Don, or is it going to be?
Oh, no. I'm ready to hand the baton off to someone else on that. We actually established a position last fall, Energy Efficiency Program Coordinator, and we chose to leave that position unfilled until we had a funding stream identified to fund that position. So up until this point, we've been handling this work internally with existing staff, but we do need to fill that position, and then we will have a EE program coordinator. That position has not yet been filled, as the dollars have not yet been allocated, but we're hopeful that we can do that at the end of the month.
Director.
This is a rather big bite for our organization. Do you think that we need to jump into all of it at one time, or would it be better to do one, maybe multifamily first? And because I thought there was some discussion at some point that the commercial was a particularly difficult thing to do. So, what are we going to jump into all of it at one time?
Yeah, I don't recall a discussion about commercial being difficult, but I think you're raising a great point, and the thinking behind our revised 2012 plan was to do just that, to walk before we run, to start with the multifamily program, get the team together, get our programs up and running, and then launch this more robust plan. I think that the difficulty with launching a small program is that you still have overhead costs that really reduce your TRC and PAC numbers. And we found that to be true with our 2012 plan. It was very difficult to have a really compelling number there when you're going through startup and launch of a program that's only going to last for 4 months. And it's hard to achieve results in that time frame when you have to interface with customers and get projects completed. So launching a small program can actually be more difficult because there are some economies of scale. There are certainly a lot more components we could have added on to this, but chose not to. I think that we've kept it at a very good level for a 2-year plan. It gives us plenty of room to get involved in a number of different sectors in energy efficiency. We also didn't want to set a precedent at the beginning for requesting a small amount of dollars. Really, the way that the statute is written, we are supposed to be allocated the funds that are collected from customers via non-bypassable charges. And so we didn't want to ask for a portion of those because that would mean that the remaining dollars still live with PG&E to administer. It's simpler to kind of have a clean approach where either PG&E is administering the program or we are administering the program.
So the program administrator costs that you're dividing amongst the different programs could actually be one person? Or
Well,
fewer, or something that you couldn't really easily divide?
Yeah, the program administrator cost will include probably 1.5 internal staff positions at the beginning. We will also be contracting with quite a few different vendors. The primary vendor that we've been working with on this program is REMS. They're based in Marin City, and they will be handling much of the audit and retrofit work on small commercial and multifamily. We will also be contracting with Richmond Build and several other organizations that will provide services to us on a vendor basis.
You don't have to explain this to us now, but is there a metric that you have considered as to determine whether or not this program is successful or not? And when would you be applying that metric? I don't need you to go through all the details, but just so that like a year or 2 years from now, we find out whether or not this program is really worth the time, effort, and resources that we're devoting to it.
Yeah, there are pretty strict guidelines around evaluation and measurement and verification of results, and we plan to conduct that on an annual basis. And we'll be reporting that to the board. The CPC will also be interested in seeing how we perform.
Okay.
And if I could mention one thing, when you talk about economies of scale, there's also the marketing and outreach programs, there's technology, and both of those are going to stretch across all the sub-programs. And that's where really the economies of scale come in at. And there's some innovative outreach programs like working with schools, working with employers, that can affect each of these sub-programs. And as far as the technology goes, part of this technology also aggregates the data in the back end. So, all the results, positive or negative of each of these programs, that'll all be fed into this aggregated data to be reported on back to the program, to adjust your campaigns, to go before the board, to go before the CPUC, et cetera.
Director Collins.
A couple of questions. Dawn, how many units, how many homes are we talking about here in this budget for 2013?
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. I can look at the plan to give you an exact number, but I think the ballpark is about 150. But I can't recall if that was an annual or a total program. But that detail is certainly in the body of the plan.
And how much per home is the average amount?
How much of the budget?
Well, how much is allocated per home? Yes, how much of the budget?
How much is allocated
For
per
each house,
home?
yeah, on average, in other words, how much are we advancing?
That's a calculation we haven't done, but I guess a ballpark would be probably about $400 per home on average. But I need to do a little.
And then that's the amount that will be paid back on the bill?
No, okay, I think you're asking a different question. So maybe what you're asking is how much would the cost be for an average retrofit for a home? How much would the customer's cost be? Okay. Typically what we see is a range of measures would be proposed to a customer. Let's say we're talking about a residential customer. So after an audit is complete, there would be a proposal that you could swap out your insulation, you could do caulking, some low-cost things, or you could move into the mid-cost range of windows, being swapped out and more expensive things, or you could go to something super expensive. And so I think that the range of measures averages from $500 to $10,000 for something really comprehensive that includes HVAC, for
Would there be a
example.
limit on it, like say $10,000? Is there a limit? I mean,
No, the limit really is what the customer's appetite is for making changes. So we're gonna give them a laundry list, and then we will give them the mechanism of on-bill financing. Now, there is a limit on the on-bill financing. We will, our approach is to only put charges on the bill that allow the customer to be paying at or below what their typical monthly average cost would be. This is important for the banks because they want some assurances that the customer will be able to continue paying the bill. If the customer wants to pay for some additional cost of the upgrade themselves beyond what's covered in the on-bill financing, they could certainly choose to do that. There's no limitation.
so the bank is financing. The customer is paying on the bill. The customer leaves town, what happens?
You mean it doesn't pay the bill?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, those are some of the mechanics that we'll be working out with PG&E, but the way things are currently structured is that if the customer, any payments that the customer makes are allocated proportionately to the PG&E side of the bill and the MEA side of the bill. If the customer doesn't pay, they receive a notice from us after a 90-day period, and we eventually terminate them and send them back to PG&E. What would happen in the case of an on-bill financing charge being tied to that bill, it would be handled by the bank and the customer directly. So it's likely that there would need to be an agreement in place between the bank and the customer that would handle that scenario. And that hasn't yet been worked out, but we actually have begun discussions with banks that looked at
We're not
that
involved
same
in that.
question. We are not
We'll
involved.
Go back here.
No, we would not be providing that financing from our balance sheet. It would come from the bank.
And the banks are very attracted to on-bill repayment because the rate of people that don't pay their bills is much lower than a typical loan. And that's one of the reasons it's attractive.
If your lights go out, and you'll pay your rent.
Yeah. There you go.
That's pretty good.
Talk about it. Yeah.
Don, you mentioned the standard offer method of financing as well. Is that currently being implemented anywhere?
Not in California, but it is being implemented in Texas and in the New England ISO. And so we'd be using the existing programs in those two areas as a model for what we would implement here on a small scale. And we'd also be reaching out to vendors that currently engage and participate in that market there and bid on that program to see if they'd be interested in bidding out on our program. I think it's worth mentioning that this is one part of the program that we clearly define as a pilot. We need to see how it's going to work in California. We don't have an ISO that is running this program, so we don't really have a market for it in California per se. But we may be able to launch a program that is a win-win for us and the vendor and the eventual end user. But that remains to be seen, so we want to pilot it and see how it works.
I think it's a tremendous program. I really hope it has great legs. It's really good.
You guys did a tremendous amount of work on this. Good job. Any further board comments or questions? How about members of the public? Energy efficiency plan?
I don't want to take the board's time, but I'm very interested in learning about your program in Sonoma and how it works and how long it's been going. And with behavior change, we know that does it stick over time? And so I can connect with you separately, or if you have some comments about that now, that would be great.
The one thing I'll say is when you look at the three components, the third component is exactly what you said, it's staying in touch with the customer, and which is not typical of programs. And that's one of the reasons why Sonoma doesn't have a lot of history. I mean, it's young. This program was just piloted at the beginning of this January. So there's not a lot of historical information there. But these tools, we believe, will engage consumers and continue to enable MEA to stay in touch with consumers.
That's great. You all probably know that I'm working on a program through Sustainable Marin with Town of Peters called Resilient Neighborhoods, and we're doing the the hands-on, boots-on-the-ground version of that without the software and the technology enhancement. So there may be some opportunity for collaboration.
I mean, and that's part of what I think Don even suggested, that we start out with a pilot program, and that's it. And I think you suggested Resilient Neighborhoods as
Yeah, in fact, we have a meeting, Rafi in the back there. He's already set up a meeting with Resilient Neighborhood and Planet Ecosystem.
Thank you.
I think there's two ways to look at this. One is that we're moving forward quickly and maybe we'll get the program up and running sooner rather than later. But you need to understand this is a really, really big fight, the energy efficiency fight. It's gonna, I'm sorry to say, it's ridiculous, but people have been on the board for a while, and people like in Novada realize that, this is how PG&E fought CCA. This is really, as I say to a lot of people, this is where the bodies are buried. And I got a comment from Loretta Lynch, who was the former president of the PUC, who tried to develop independent programs. She put 4 years of $50 million on the table for independent programs. They all, every single one of them, I shouldn't say, 49 out of 50 saved more energy per dollar than the utilities. All 49, brand new programs. The utilities have been running programs for 30 years. So, as far as whether or not we can do a better program than PG&E, absolutely we can do a better program than PG&E. Almost anybody can do a better program than PG&E. But I really want to caution you that the way this has moved forwards at the commission is they violated all their own processes, and there's going to be hell to pay for that, frankly. And it could have been done, all out of the regular process, which was the 2012 program was pretty much left, it all happened in the back room, which I don't think is a great idea, but on the other hand, sometimes at the commission, it's like, okay, otherwise you're going to have to go through the processes. What has happened with the Jody Fitch ruling on the 2013-14 plan, she put everything backwards. She basically said, here, you can put in a proposal in less than a month. I mean, cities, and we had absolutely no time for input on this, no time to discuss it. I mean, thank goodness that Dawn was prepared in many ways, and so she was ready to move forward, and thank you, Jeff, for coming in and being available to do this. But that is an outrage, in my opinion, to force us to, to put a huge, it's 150 pages. And there's no time for input, for public input. There's no time, and the public input, the process allows for people to get interested and excited about it. It's, the utilities take enormous amounts of time to put their, to have their program, they get program advisory groups, and, so there's a lot of opportunities for input. But I just want to tell you that what has happened since they put, they said here, CCAs, you can put a proposal in, and then we're going to consider them all together. So we are considering in the proceeding now, the utilities, thousands of pages of utility proposals, these regional energy networks, and the CCA proposals, and they wanted to get them all together. Well, I think that would have been a great idea, and I don't know why Commissioner Farron didn't do it that way, and that's something that I hope the board will take that up with Mr. Farron. It's like, why weren't we CCAs in the May decision? Why were we an afterthought? Because what we had in the utilities, all of them filed very nasty comments on the 2012 plan. And they brought up all of these irregularities, and the irregularities going forward in the 2013-14 plan are even greater, because this thing has been pushed through, and the ruling says, okay, parties will have it, we're going to have these applications, but then parties are going to have a chance to give us comments after it's all done, after these are all in. So what that does is leave us open to all kinds of attacks. And maybe the commission is well-intentioned and they really want to move us forward, or maybe they want to really screw us up. I mean, this could be looked at in either way, but just get ready to fight for the money. And this is this is going to be a major fight. And I understand we've got people waiting, who are ready to start the program, and we should do it. But already, I mean, in the back room on the 2012 program, they took out the small commercial program The multifamily program, the utilities are saying that is not cost effective and that's illegal, because we only have one program now. If that's not cost effective, we're in trouble. And so this is the kind of thing, when they hurry you up like this, you're gonna have problems. And, you know, so I just want to read this little comment from Loretta Lynch.
Barbara, let's, if you could wrap it, I think we
Yeah.
fully get your point. I
Okay.
actually have a follow-up question for Don, so 30 more seconds.
Okay, well, I completely agree with Barbara that energy efficiency is where many of the bodies are buried, and one of the places where the PUC and the utilities game the system against CCAs. I also agree that the PUC has pulled this 15% limitation out of nowhere and that it is not required by statute. However, MEA as a party if MEA does not consistently fight the 15%, especially in this precedent-setting decision, then it will go down as the law forevermore, with the utilities keeping CCAs in their small little box for business as usual. This is a very important decision on many, many fronts, and it deserves to be fought vigorously.
Thank you. Don, give us a sense of the review process, the timing going forward with PUC on 01314.
Sure. So the plan was submitted on July 16th. Reply comments were due about 2 weeks after that. PG&E, Southern California Edison, and SDG&E all filed comments in protest of the plan that we have filed. And replies to their comments were due last week, and we submitted reply comments.
I'm sorry, you actually said July 16th, which was the 2013-14 plan, so the 2012 plan was submitted.
No, I'm asking
Wait,
about
okay.
1314. We already
Yeah,
talked
13,
about
14, okay,
12
well,
earlier.
I think you're getting those mixed up, though.
No, you're right, I am mixing up the two
Yeah,
plans.
Okay.
which is easy to do.
Yeah, it's easy to do. So as far as the 013-014 plan goes, the comments due back on that should be, I believe they're coming out tomorrow, and then we will be needing to respond to those by Monday the 13th. And then we have already begun holding ex-parte meetings with each of the commissioners' offices on the 013-014 plan, which one of our directors, Director Sears, participated in the first one. Thank you very much. And we have 2 more coming up on the 13th that we'll have Director Connolly participating in. If you're interested in being part of an ex-parte meeting, let us know. We'll have lots of opportunities for that in the next couple of weeks. In addition to the comments being filed by the IOUs and then the counter comments being filed by us, the ex-parte dialogue will be really important. The date for a decision to come out on this is not yet firm, but it's expected to be sometime in the October-November timeframe.
All right, well, good discussion. Any further questions or comments? Is this an action item?
No, this is for discussion only.
Okay. All right, great. Item 6, agreement with Cavco Worldwide.
All right. I'll be introducing this item with a few comments, and then later on, I'm going to introduce 2 representatives who we invited to join us tonight from AFCO Worldwide, who will be discussing the proposal that they have offered for MEA. But the first thing I wanted to offer was congratulations to everyone for the completion of our Phase 2B enrollments. It was a long time coming and took a whole lot of work from everyone in this room and also people who aren't here tonight. So it's a really exciting time. With the close of July, we've successfully offered service to everyone in Marin County, and we've grown our customer base by almost 7 times. So I think it's a really great accomplishment. And with the completion of our expansion, we can now begin preparing for enrollment in Richmond, which would happen in 2013. Moving along into Richmond is really going to result in a changing landscape for all of us here as far as Marin Clean Energy is concerned. Before we ever began providing service in Marin, we conducted research. That was in early 2010 to determine public interest and opinion related to electricity, and that was really valuable to us. It ended up forming the basis for our messaging that we still use today. What we took from that survey was that we needed to focus our communications on providing cleaner energy for a healthier environment at affordable costs and without compromising reliability through our partnership with PG&E. With our recent growth and our expected growth in Richmond, we're facing new challenges as far as communications are concerned, and it really requires us to reassess our messaging and our tactics with our new current customer base and our future customer base. We want to make sure that we can communicate effectively with customers. Our goal has always been to be as transparent as possible by providing clear and easy to understand information for all of our potential customers about our program, so that they had all of the information necessary to make the best decision for them about whether or not they wanted to choose Marin Clean Energy. With that goal in mind and the period of transition in mind that we're in and we'll be entering into over the next several months, now is really an ideal time to reassess our communication strategy and our messaging with our new customer base. And just with that introduction, I'd like to pass it along to our executive officer to talk about next steps for that process.
Yeah, so because we wanted to find the most effective ways to communicate with customers, we conducted several interviews with companies that provide public relations strategy services and market research, which we viewed as very important at this juncture. We conducted in-depth interviews with APCO Worldwide, BMWL, a company that we've worked with in the past, and Manifest Marketing and PR company. And we received proposals from all of these companies in addition to the in-depth interviews. We were particularly struck by the professional expertise of the APCO team, particularly in relationship to the energy industry. And this is really important because energy is kind of a cumbersome, maybe even convoluted topic to communicate, and being able to do that in a clear and compelling way with customers is really important, and we're hoping to learn a lot and build off of the expertise that they've gained. They've actually provided services to a number of folks really key to the energy sector in California, including CAISO and some of the IOUs actually, so I'll let them talk about that when they come up. But we're really excited about the experience in the energy sector. We were also struck by the deep experience that they have in conducting market research and their ability to do it in-house. Some of the firms that we spoke to tend to farm that out and then bring that information back in-house to develop suggestions and recommendations. But APCO Worldwide does this in-house and has developed a very well thought through approach to the market research that we thought was very holistic, comprehensive, and we produce an excellent array of quantitative information. So that's why we've invited APCO to be with us tonight, and we've already begun working with them on a small contract. We'll talk about that in a minute, but this is for hourly services that they've been providing to us over the last few weeks. We're excited to talk about the market research tonight that they'd be able to provide to us. And before they come up, I just wanted to say a few things about why this is being brought forward at this time. There was quite a bit of discussion about this in our executive committee meeting several weeks ago. And for those of you who didn't have the benefit of being at that meeting, I wanted to recap some of the ideas and the thoughts that came out of that. One of the things that was identified as being really important is coming up with quantitative information. A lot of the communications that we do with customers now is based on qualitative information. And so, we might look at what's been in the IJ lately, in the editorials, what the customers that come into our office are saying, but the communications approach is not tailored to any specific quantitative data that we can use to inform our messaging and our methods of communicating with customers. So that's really one of the reasons behind the thinking on this. I think it's worth noting that the proposed cost of the contract with APCO Worldwide, it's certainly a significant contract. as far as the cost goes, but it amounts to less than 0.2% of 1% of the annual MEA budget, and is also likely to pay for itself through customer retention and an increase in the number of well-informed, satisfied customers that will talk to their neighbors and spread the word and improve the reputation of Marin Clean Energy and those that are associated with it. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about other agencies that use market research to gain quantitative information. This is certainly not new. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this through your work with local governments. But we've highlighted a few and included in your supplemental packet some market research that was performed in Sonoma County and in the city and county of San Francisco, specifically related to CCA efforts. There is also market research performed commonly by government agencies that's just general customer or in a local government's case, really looking for public feedback to help with policy setting. Sonoma County spends just over $100,000 on general polling efforts on an annual or biannual basis. The County of Marin spent $53,000 on its most recent general poll of constituents, and the Marin County Parks and Recreation actually conducted a recent poll that was $28,000 to determine public interest on some relevant topics. As far as CCA specific polling, Jamie touched on the polling that we did back a couple of years ago. We haven't done any polling since that time, so we're certainly due. In Sonoma, approximately $40,000 was spent on CCA-focused polling in 2011. And we've attached in your supplemental packet some of the results, some of the outcomes of that study. There were two parts to it in the report that came out. One was really focused on residential, the other was focused on commercial and business outcomes. But they learned a lot from that and are using that information to develop their plan, their implementation plan. I spoke to folks in Sonoma County to gauge their the value that they felt that this process offered, and they certainly felt that it was extremely valuable, really essential in helping them identify the development of their program and their methods of communicating with the public. The city and county of San Francisco spent just over $100,000 on CCA market research, and we've included some of the results in your packet here. A couple of things that I think are worth pointing out in this study, just to give a sense of what sort of information you can glean. What they found is that customers, for the most part, or members of the public, really like PG&E. And this was something that we found out when we did our initial polling. It's not something that was intuitive to us and wasn't what we were hearing from folks in the editorials and the customers walking in even. We don't hear that so much, but in the polling you can get that information in a quantitative way. So that information was, it looks like that same information was identified in San Francisco, that was identified in Marin. And if you all want to take a look at where that's located, I'm looking at the San Franciscans' attitudes towards Clean Power SF. This is slide 11, is where they do an analysis. The other thing that I thought was interesting is how much more folks are willing to pay to become to be a customer of a green program. And they were able to really, with a pretty good breakdown, give a feel for how far will folks go, and also which customers are willing to pay more. So what they found is that customers that have a higher income tend to be willing to pay a bit more. They also found a high correlation between age and interest in the Clean Power SF program. The younger folks that were interviewed were more interested in paying more, and the folks that are older in the population were far less interested in participating in the Green Power SF program. So this is the kind of data that can be gleaned from a marketing effort. Certainly is valuable in as far as determining where to spend communication dollars, what communications methods work best, and what kinds of information customers need to get about the program.
The last comment I'll make on some of the benefits that we discussed, this type of market research can also be quite helpful in our discussions with financial institutions as we go forward with achieving a credit rating and bond issuance. The financial entities want to know what is the public sentiment? What do customers really want? How do customers really feel about the agency? And having qualitative data doesn't work so well with the bank, but having quantitative information can really be quite helpful in those discussions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over. I think that Jamie is going to introduce our APCO team.
Sure, great. Well, I'd like to introduce Jessica Sheehan and Jose Amacio, who are both here today from APCO. You're welcome to come on up. Jose is the managing director of APCO's Sacramento office and has represented municipal and investor-owned utilities, as well as the California Independent System Operator. And Jessica is the associate director in APCO's Sacramento office and assists clients in the utilities and energy sector with communication planning. Thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'll kick this off. First of all, thank you for having us here tonight. We're excited to have the opportunity to talk about our company and talk about our ideas for how to do the research. So we can skip that slide. A quick word about the company. We were founded 28 years ago. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have about 30 offices around the world. 3 of them are on the West Coast, Seattle, Sacramento, and San Francisco. We just have more than 600 employees at the present time, and we are independently owned. In fact, we're one of the world's largest independently owned public affairs or public relations companies. We also are a certified woman-owned company. I'm sure you can't read this on the screen, although I understand you do have this information in your packet. But this shows you the range of services we offer. We're a full-service firm, and Don already mentioned that we provide research services in-house. The next slide, Pink, says a few things about our research arm, which we call APCO Insight. It basically is a research firm within our firm. We have somebody on a team on the West Coast, but the team for the most part is based in Washington, D.C. In fact, the people who would work with you on the research program are located in Washington, D.C., which is why we're here tonight representing them instead of having them come in all the way from Washington to talk in detail about the program. Although we can do that. Jessica's going to walk through that approach in a second. The very last bullet says that we do work for, 8 of the Fortune 20 and other Fortune 100 companies. That's true. But I also want to make sure you understand that we do work for other entities as well, smaller companies, public agencies, nonprofits, trade associations, folks like that. I don't know how much we want to really get into in terms of our energy experience. I'll just say that we do have a global energy and clean tech practice group. We have both a North America group and a global group. Jessica and I are both on the team. Across the network, we have obviously very extensive experience working in all types of energy issues, providing a range of services. If you want me to talk about any of the client work we've done, I'm happy to do that. But Don did mention that I've done work for CalISO. I worked for them during the energy crisis in 2001 and 2002. We've done a lot of work for municipal utilities. I can get into some detail about that if you'd like, and also JPAs that represent municipal utilities. And we've done a fair amount of work for the 3 IOUs in California. And we've done work for the business community on regulatory issues. So for the types of issues we've done work on, it's legislative issues, regulatory issues, infrastructure issues, service issues, and other reputational drivers that affect the company's reputation. So with that, I'll hand it off to Jessica.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, members of the board. I know that you have, I know you have a copy of the proposal in your packets, but we did want to spend a little bit of time tonight walking through our proposed approach and then answering any questions that you may have. So as you'll see here, there are 3 phases of our approach. The first phase is discovery or the research phase. The second phase is alignment, so that's really taking what we learned from the research and then focusing or adapting your plans for communications, for customer communications, for community engagement, and even your business planning to align with the research findings. And then the third phase is the actual engagement phase. So that's how do we increase public understanding of the long-term value of a relationship with MCE? How do we better connect in a more meaningful way with customers and the local communities? So both here in Marin and then looking at moving forward into Richmond. So the purpose of the discovery phase or the research, it really is to identify what is most important to your customers. What is it that they expect from a relationship with MCE, and how do they think you're currently performing against what they expect or what they most value or find important? What do they perceive as your strengths, and what do they view as your weaknesses? So that again, we can learn from that and adopt communications as well as planning and engagement strategies accordingly. You go to the next slide, please. So the first stage is to do some qualitative research, and you'll see here we're proposing to do focus groups. We have 3 focus groups proposed. Those would be conducted in Marin. 2 of those would be with current customers, so both ones that have been enrolled for some time as well as some of the newly enrolled customers. And then 1 focus group that would be with customers who have chosen to opt out. We would also be conducting in-depth interviews with commercial customers, again in Marin, 3 with small business customers, and then 3 with medium or large customers. And the reason that we're proposing to do all of the qualitative research in Marin is because this is where you have a track record for 2+ years. These are the people that know you the best, and we think we'll get the most meaningful insights that we can then use to develop the survey that we'll take into the field in Richmond and Marin. And if you go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about that survey. So again, then using what we learned from those discussions, from that dialogue that we have, both in the focus groups as well as one-on-one with the commercial customers, we'll develop this survey to go and test what we've learned to see if it's validated or see if maybe there's some things that we learned that are a little different, particularly in Richmond. The number of customers that we're proposing to talk with is a total of 380 interviews. These are conducted by live interviewers. These are not robocalls. These are detailed conversations, in-depth conversations that we would have with these customers, looking at doing a total of 200 with residential customers in Marin, and then 50 in Richmond, and then a total of 130 commercial customers, and that's 100 in Marin and 30 in Richmond. Next slide, please. And then based on that, we're going to produce an actionable report that will lay out what we found by doing the data analysis and modeling from these surveys and from these interviews, so that we can have a discussion with you and talk about where there are opportunities to enhance or refine not only communications, but again, where you're getting involved in the community, both here, looking ahead to where to get involved at the community level in Richmond to make sure that we're getting involved in places that make sense, that are important to our customers, and that ultimately provide more value to them. And then lastly, it's about engagement. Again, it's about increasing visibility. It's making sure we're at the places that our customers want us. It's about improving an understanding of what a long-term relationship, what the value of that relationship is to customers, and ultimately providing them with better service that aligns with their expectations. Next slide. This one's very difficult to see, so I apologize, but did just want to kick off a couple of the key milestones. This is a timeline that we've developed for the research. This is based on a kickoff date that would be of August 6th. As you can see here, the month of August would be devoted primarily to the qualitative research. So the first few weeks would be to develop the discussion guide that would be used for the focus groups, as well as what we would use for the IDIs, to be slightly different tools. It would also be to recruit people to participate in the focus groups. And then we're proposing on holding the focus groups at the end of August at a facility in Novato.
Could I ask a question
Yes,
here?
of
Because I
course.
tried to read this too.
It's just not easy, right?
Do the colors mean it, the colors of the Tetris-looking blocks mean anything?
It makes it easier to read if they were all the same color and difficult to read.
I mean, are they supposed to be the same color?
No, the answer is no.
They're not supposed to be the same color, but no, they don't mean anything. It's really just
It
visually
just-
make it easier to read than if they were all the same color.
So the fact that some are dark and some are light, some are brown, some are blue is not, doesn't lead us to understand anything.
No, I
Okay.
can maybe even correspond to where we had like the header of the category, but no, they don't mean anything, the colors. So sorry for any confusion in that.
Now, the fact that a block is on a week doesn't indicate how much time is spent doing that during the week. It's simply that
Correct,
something
you're
is
right.
done during the week.
Correct, because for the focus groups, which would be a one day, we would do 3 in one day, 1 at 4, 1 at 6, 1 at 8 p.m. That shows a week block, but it would be
So
a
this
one
is just
day.
kind of telling us what's
In
happening.
general, what's going to happen when, just to give you an idea of the timing. So, and we would have a report based on what we learned from the in-depth interviews as well as the focus groups by September 14th. And from that report, there can be some learnings we can already start, using to inform strategy, recognizing that, we do need to go into the field with the qualitative, which would happen near the end of September, mid to late September, and then October would be using to take the data, to do the models, to do the analysis, so that we have a final report with recommendations about specific actions to take in very early November. So again, about a 3-month time frame from the start to the finish. Yes.
On the focus groups, I assume you're getting the names from staff or from our data on how to find the 3 different groups you were talking about.
Yeah, can you answer that one in terms of how we work with the vendors?
How do you get the names?
For the focus groups, we will add a list that I believe we're going to be getting from the staff.
Right.
And we'll go through it and try to do some stratification in the sampling to make sure that we're screening out people that we don't want to be in the groups.
But if you get the names only from staff, aren't you only likely to get people who like us?
We're not giving
No.
names, we're giving a customer list.
Oh, it's customer list,
Comprehensive-
you're not-
right.
A comprehensive.
And they're gonna randomly pick from the customer list?
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
One question on the time frame, though. I think the whole point with the tremendous rollout in Marin and new customers and potential customers in Richmond, customers in Marin are now making the decision whether or not to stay in the program. So this sounds like we would have a completed survey by early November. Does that time frame work with what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of the rollout?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there will be information that will get along the way that could inform some of our communications with customers as we go. That it will be completed before we launch into Richmond, which will.
Well, I'm not just talking about Richmond, though. We're trying to figure out how to provide Marin customers who are making the decision as we speak and will be over the next 2 months with the information they need to make an informed decision on whether to opt out. So does this work with that?
Yeah, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that we are going to be here for many years. We're going to have ongoing relationships with customers. There may be customers that chose to opt out at some point for whatever reason that we can attract back to the program. And we'd like to make some concerted efforts to do that late this year. We've actually, as I've mentioned to some of you, that we've seen a slightly higher opt-out rate with this customer phase-in, and we think part of that is tied to the type of communication that we did with customers that was a lot more visible and overt. And I think that was our goal, was to be extremely transparent and encourage folks to take action. But that has resulted in a slightly higher than anticipated opt-out rate at this point in the time frame. We would expect to be at this point maybe 6 months from now. So part of these efforts will help us to look at ways we can mitigate the impacts that we're having now related to opt-outs and enable us to retain the customers that we have and potentially reach out to customers that might have been unsure during the opt-out phase and invite them to come back in.
And also add that I think the trending with our customers taking action on whether or not they wanted to opt out was earlier on. I think Dawn implied that. But it was, what we're seeing now is the rate of customers opting out is significantly lower than it was in April and May. And we are still communicating with our customers. We sent out another opt-out notice recently, and the response to that notice was very small compared to what we've seen before. I think that, what it tells us is that a significant amount of customers or potential customers have made the choice about whether or not to enroll with Marin Clean Energy already. I think the number of customers who are making that decision is a lot lower now.
Yes, go ahead.
I have a couple questions about the interviews. You said there were going to be phone interviews, and I know from my experience when we get calls that are polling type calls, I always find it very frustrating because it's always an either-or answer. There's never any open-ended questions that are asked. There's never really the opportunity to give a meaningful answer. And so I always question whether the results or the data that are compiled are really useful or not. So that's one question that I have. The other question that I have is, when you call and do the interviews, are they informational at all? So, will you be giving any of these customers information, that might assist them, that they don't already have?
Sure, yeah. We haven't designed an instrument yet, but generally speaking, we ask both closed-ended and open-ended questions. For any polling we do, and we're talking polls that usually go from 18 to 23 minutes for the interview. For that length of interview, we try and include at least 3 open-ended questions. But I don't think that we're going to use that time as an opportunity to provide information to the people that we talk to. We're trying to basically ask meaningful questions that we hope will give us the results we want to help us figure out, what kind of outcomes we want to achieve. And I think because of the statistical model that we've developed, which is why I think Don and her staff wanted us to come to you tonight, is because that model is very unique and actionable, as Jessica quickly alluded to, but we could elaborate about that. That is what differentiates the kind of research that we're talking about tonight and what most other firms provide, especially, I'll say it, in California.
Okay, thank you.
Who's the type of person that's actually conducting these interviews within your company? I can't imagine Jessica's calling 300 people. So obviously you can have a staff, a group of people that are doing this.
Our staff actually will do the in-depth interviews, but you're right, we will not actually conduct the 380. We have vendors that we do use for that piece. So that is not actually done by APCO staff.
And during the interview process, we talked to Don and their team about this, and the people who do these interviews are trained by us. We spend a lot of time with them to make sure that when they do these interviews, there are no missteps, and the interview goes as smoothly as it possibly can go.
I guess the reason why I asked the question, with due respect to people from India, I happened to get a call from India this morning, trying to sell me a product that I didn't know they were going to sell me, but it didn't make sense. So I just want to make sure, for the large amount of money that we're going to spend with your company, that we're going to get very quality people that are going to be able to articulate the questions, respond to it, take down the data, so we have good information to present to us.
I can assure you that'll be the case. And we cannot outsource, other than perhaps the Midwest, the United States.
And we will also have, it will be APCO Insight staff conducting the focus groups as well, I should point out. So for all of the qualitative, that will be done by APCO staff. And they'll be the ones we'll be doing all the, the data analysis and the modeling, all of that as well. So the only piece where we use an outside vendor is for the survey.
Since I'm hogging all the questions, I'll ask one more. The questionnaire, I was reading the little blocks in here, and so the types of questions, how they're phrased, all of that, I assume that you're going to rigorously review that with staff, and I'm not sure what level with the board or different committees with the board will get a chance to weigh in too, but I think it's really, really important because the questions aren't good, it doesn't matter what you come up with, because that's, I think, the most key point, I think.
And the succession driving again, to be honest, so you're absolutely right. Don's in charge of what she does with the information we give to her.
Yeah, I think this will be vetted at the executive committee, and that's where we typically talk about this sort of thing. But we'll certainly be bringing information to the board as we have good chunks of information to pass through.
Yeah, my only thought is there's only 4 folks on the executive committee, and I just think that this is really important. So to the extent the other board members are interested, I think more minds think better than less to come up with the very best questions we can. And I think that I'm just throwing that out as a suggestion.
Let's go to Director Small.
I have just a quick question. Will it be possible to have this broken out and given us information by community? Because some towns may have there may be different information from different communities, and it will certainly help us as council people to be able to go back to our community if there's particular issues that arise. So however you talk to the customer base, I would like to know what may be of most concern to the constituents from my community. And then the other thing is I would find some way of rolling this out to the community, that this survey will be done, because personally speaking, I get many phone calls, and as soon as I hear that it's a survey, I say no thank you and hang up. So I think that we're very busy in our lives, and also I don't know when you make the calls, but I seem to get most of them during dinner hour, which is so frustrating. But I think you should roll out to the community, and maybe through the IJ or some articles, that this is going to actually be done, and we would love to have the information, and we would appreciate your participation if you feel so desired. Because I think a lot of people will just hang up.
Great.
It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great suggestions. And just to tag on to Director Frank's comment, just so everyone's aware, a reminder that all board members are welcome to participate at every committee meeting. That's why we send the agenda and the packet for the committee to all board members. So absolutely everyone's welcome to attend. And if you can attend, but you have feedback on what you see in the packet, you can contact staff.
Director Bragg.
I was just wondering, I saw there's a dropout, pretty high anticipated dropout rate in San Francisco, or an anticipated dropout rate in San Francisco. And I'm just wondering if you're going to be analyzing PG&E's messaging, because it seems to me that we not only need to find out what our customer base really wants, but I think some of the decisions may be driven by some of the messaging that PG&E is putting out there. So I'm just wondering whether that's going to be part within the scope of what you guys are going to be doing.
One of the challenges that we'll have early on in this process is deciding how we want to have a conversation with individuals when we do the in-depth interviews and the participants in a focus group. I suspect that we're going to all want to try and generate conversations with folks that indirectly sort of get people to talk about the kinds of messages that PG&E has been putting out there. We're somewhat familiar with that, needless to say. But I don't think we would be so direct in our, particularly when we get to the quantitative part of the process, to basically try and characterize something as a PG&E message. So I think the answer to your question, Larry, is yes, we will do that, and we'll find a way to do that indirectly, so that we're going to be satisfied that we understand how people feel about the range of issues, the range of arguments that have been raised over the last couple of years.
Right, so it's going to be built into your approach.
Right.
Thanks.
Director Wachtel.
A couple of things. I would hesitate participating too much in their drawing up the questions. We're hiring these people for a lot of money, and they're professionals, and I don't want to putter too much with that. But
I'll disagree with you, of course, as always, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but go ahead.
Well, we can talk about this later, but my point of view is that if we don't think they know what they're doing, let's not hire them. But if we think we know what they're doing, then I don't know that our input is going to make their questions any more relevant than what the professionals think.
I guess my response, the only reason why I'm suggesting input, you're right. They're experts at surveying and have a lot of experience apparently in the energy industry, so that's why Don picked them. All I'm saying is for it to sensitize them that we have a carpet of fiefdoms here. We have the county, and we got 11 little cities, or some a little bit bigger than the others, and the politics, the opinions, the way people think is very different across the county. And so the same set of questions will be depending upon who the person is answering. And in some measure does depend upon where that person lives and all of that. And so that's all I'm trying to sensitize you to. So I know for our own small city, when we've done surveys, those surveys that company was asking very carefully what in my situation was with the city council, specifically to our town, because our staff and our city council knows presumably, knows our town well, and so now you've got a county of 260,000, but it's not like Sacramento, I guess where Jessica's from, where it's a larger city. We really are fragmented, and I just wanted to sensitize that. So when Carla asked the question, can you ask for her town, you know, and I saw you kind of shrug or shake your shoulders like that's going to be difficult. I don't know how you can, whether you can do it by town, by zip code.
No, we can break, we can definitely break it by
But what kind?
I don't think they'd have any trouble identifying by zip code the source of the information that they're gonna get. And I don't think we're quite as homogeneous as San Francisco is with regard to their views on energy. But really the question I wanted to get to is I see that the analysis that we're asking these people to do really do approach two different sets of people. One are the Marin people, and the other is the people in Richmond. The Marin people will have either opted out already or not, and so there's a purpose to see whether we can get them in or whether we can have retention. That's one part. But I think a really, really, really important part of what I would like, and it doesn't indicate on your charts how much time you're dedicating to Richmond as opposed to dedicating, at least I couldn't find it. It may be there. I can't see that one.
Yeah.
How much time you're dedicating to Richmond and how much time you're dedicating to Marin, but I really think a significant part of this should be dedicated to our entry into Richmond and how we can make that as smooth and fluid as possible. I think there's going to be some issues, and I really look to you guys to help us significantly there, and I really think more than the Marin retention.
Well, why don't we ask Don why we're doing this? Maybe we should, I mean, I think the staff.
Well, actually, Director Sears wants to kind of elaborate.
I really do, because I share the same concerns that you do, Ken. And in our staff report, it did set up the numbers of how many people in Marin, both residential and commercial, would be involved in this study and how many in Richmond. And I can certainly understand the desire to talk to a lot of people in Marin because we are the people here who've had experience with MEA. But I'm quite concerned about the imbalance. So there's 200, the proposal is 200 Marin County residential customers, 50 Marin small commercial customers, 50 Marin medium to large business customers, 50 Richmond residential customers, and 30 Richmond business customers. And so I have a number of issues here. On stage one, where you're really doing the qualitative analysis, as you indicated, that's Marin only. And that, of course, makes sense to some extent because those are the people, as I said, who've had the experience. But you're then going to stage two, the quantitative analysis portion of it, and you're basing 2 out of the 3 factors of information you're trying to develop in the quantitative analysis on perceptions and information that you've gotten in stage one, which is only from Marin residents. And you know, you've already heard people bring up the issue of the diversity that we have here in Marin. We really are not familiar with the Richmond market. And so it very much concerns me that we'll then go ask a very much smaller number of people in Richmond if they agree with what the people in Marin have said were their priorities. And I'm just concerned that that may not fully explore or give us basis to assess what the priorities and values of people in Richmond are. So that's one piece of it. Second piece is, and Don, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my impression, based on prior conversations, that we think there's a significant opportunity for commercial customers in Richmond.
No, I think that what we've talked about is some of the large commercial customers in Richmond, maybe difficult customers to serve for a number of reasons, and so those customers are not necessarily important to the agency. In fact, those customers may be enrolled in a later phase, but there's not a need to really focus on those large industrial customers.
Right. So we don't actually think that the user, the customer mix in Richmond, I mean, given how I personally think little we know about Richmond, this is kind of guesstimating, but we don't expect there to be a different customer mix between residential and commercial in Richmond than we've already seen to date in Marin.
No, they're there certainly will be a different customer mix. Yeah, but I guess I just wanted to clarify that the large commercial customers aren't necessarily needing to be a focus.
Understood, but there are other commercial customers who are not large, and to the extent that there may be an enhanced opportunity to get that body of commercial customers in Richmond, it seems to me that we don't capture that. We don't get enough information by only talking to 30 of them. So, I mean, I share Director Wachtel's concerns here that we kind of got an apples and oranges issue, because needs that we may have in Marin are quite different. I mean, if the issue is going forward, will we be able to change the hearts and minds of some of our opt-outs and just inform our people so that we can continue to have beneficial customer relations? That's very different than finding out enough about a very new market in which we have no experience, so we are best informed on how to market our product and inform those customers and really figure out what their issues are. So I think I've laid out my concerns about, is there really a proper mix here of the targeted participants in the survey?
So Don, how do you want to deal with this excellent line of questioning here? I mean, I have some thoughts, and we've changed some things, as you know, over the last couple of weeks. So do you want to respond first?
Yeah, I'd like to. What I'd like to ask, and it's interesting that I know that it's what you're bringing up is something that we brought up also. We had the same question: why the breakdown? Is this the best approach? And so, with you all being the experts that have been doing this, this is what you do. We'd like to look to you to see if there's a way you might recommend a modification that might allow us to glean more information from Richmond without impacting the overall overall outcomes of the program.
We can do that, and we can certainly try and do that within the constraints of
I reckon just the budget constraints, yeah.
Because we just start with a bigger budget. Let me say one thing, though, to kind of just fill in maybe a blank for everybody here. And this is a hard thing to really understand without actually seeing our model. Really what we're doing when we go through the qualitative phase is we're trying to identify what we call attributes. And when we've done this in the past, and we've done it for a couple of other energy companies, what we find is that there are a lot of attributes, many of which can be grouped or lumped together. 100 to 120, different attributes, again, many of which can be grouped. So the question that you're raising is, can we assume that the attributes that we can isolate during the qualitative research phase in Marin County be exactly those attributes that would be identified if we were to do qualitative research in the city of Richmond? And that is a fair question. So, we did make an assumption that we could use the attributes identified in Marin County and use them basically as a way to create a model to find out what people in Richmond think. And that may or may not be true without doing qualitative research in the city of Richmond.
The other thing that's worth mentioning is that if we make adjustments here, we could, one of the adjustments we may want to consider is a shifting of the number of folks, in one of these groups to another. It's worth mentioning that at the beginning of our discussions with APCO Worldwide, the initial proposal was coming in a bit higher as far as the overall cost, and it was included a greater sample size. We worked to reduce the cost, and as a result, it impacted the sample size. So I don't think we have ability to add to these numbers, these total numbers, but there may be an ability to make some subtle shifts between the groupings.
The only other thing I would add is when we were looking at the numbers, both the original proposal and working with Don and staff on adjusting some of those numbers, we also were looking at the customer base and what was somewhat proportionate. Understanding that yes, it's very important to understand Richmond as you prepare to enroll customers there, but also not wanting to neglect the 95,000 customers in Marin and making sure that we understand their expectations and values as well, because that's a very important
but they're
area.
situated differently than the Richmond customers that we
understood.
don't have yet. I mean, this is, and it goes back to Damon's question about timing issues. I mean, if we complete our opt-out period by November, and we don't have a final analysis, and this is, I'm not faulting anyone, if we don't have a final analysis of the survey until November, then it's not, I think it's going to be hard to say that the survey data is going to have a significant impact on our immediate opt-out period, right? It's more of a forward-looking study, which can be helpful, but that's a very different goal and need than is to understand a brand new market where we're about to launch. So I just think we need to give some more thought to, and I understand the proportionality issue, but because these customer bases are so differently situated right now, I'm not sure that strict proportionality is the best guide to how we end up with our numbers and what categories.
I agree with Director Sears, but one thing I want to add too is there's a factor with regard to Richmond that I would like to know about that I don't really need to know about Marin, and that is there going to be any resistance to people in Richmond joining an organization called Marin Clean Energy? Now, you're not going to have that resistance in, presumably, Marin cities. And I don't know if it's real, but I'd like you guys to tell us.
That's the questions we'll bring over.
And if there is a resistance, I mean, but see, those are questions that you're not going to, obviously not going to ask the Marin residents. But, and you know, I think we really need to know, is there any sensitivity to a non-Marin city, no matter where it is, a non-Marin city, buying their energy, you're joining a JPA, you're joining an organization that's called Marin Clean Energy. And if there is that sensitivity, what can we do through our marketing and what can we do through our outreach in order to resolve that sensitivity? That's something that I think is really, my perception is that's really important. Because I don't think people outside Marin see Marin the same way as people inside Marin. and I'm thrilled that Richmond wants, as a community, to join MEA, and I welcome them open-handedly, open-armedly, whatever. But we got individual voters there who are going to opt in or opt out with their feet, and we have to understand those people. And that's really what I look to you guys for.
Well, okay. We agree.
Director Green.
One of the things that concerns me is if I think I heard you correctly, and what I heard was that you're not going to do any sort of qualitative assessment as to Richmond. And when you compare the Richmond community and the Marin community, the demographics differ in two dramatic regards. One has to do with race, and the other has to do with money. People in Marin are white and wealthy, generally speaking. People in Richmond are African American and not nearly so wealthy. And I think one of the perceptual challenges that we would have, just from a common sense point of view, with respect to a marketing approach, is we don't want to be a bunch of Marinites going with an uneducated, insensitive marketing campaign that hasn't done any sort of research or asked any kind of qualitative questions as to the people in Richmond, and to use the vernacular, lay our trip on them. We would really want to have some pretty profound sensitivities so that we don't step all over ourselves in broaching what has every potential of being a very promising partnership, just because, and especially spend a lot of money on marketing, where it's something, what the result is for us, if we want to save our opt-outs and we get the information it's too late to save our opt-outs, what's the point of doing that? And if what we want to do is be appropriate in terms of our overtures so as to not
generate undue opt-outs in Richmond, we better pay clear attention to our demographics there.
You don't want the notices to have peacock feathers on them.
No, we don't want notices with peacock feathers, that's right.
I mean, can you guys comment on that? I mean, does that, that seems to make sense, but professionally speaking, what are your thoughts on
I
it?
think we welcome the opportunity to come back and have another discussion with our researchers in DC and down our staff, and to see if we can, how we can take the budget that you've got before you tonight and see how we can change some things around so that we are doing qualitative research in Richmond and reallocate resources so that we have a balance that I think strikes the kind of chord that I'm hearing many of you articulate.
Director Collins, and then
I was going to comment. I would assume that, looking at your resume, that is what you do, and that's how you do it, and then you'll analyze how you're going to approach this based upon the demographics. Otherwise, we could do it ourselves. So,
You and me, Dick.
And I also assume that it's not going to be a shotgun. It's going to be phased. You're going to go first where you have the least amount of time, and we need the answer the soonest. You're going to address that and then go to the next phase.
I think that's why Don wanted to include a timeline.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess the other thing related to that, just as there's been a suggestion here that some directors may want more input, whether or not we should actually have any input on crafting questions, I think is an open question, but to the extent that there's an opportunity for directors to provide knowledge that they have about their specific communities, I think we'd want to include our Richmond folks also to help inform that piece of the research, which is something you probably talked about already.
Yeah, this is really helpful feedback, and it's very uniform feedback, so I think we will be able to incorporate the suggestions that have been made here tonight and integrate them into the draft. Thank you.
Super. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and great comments.
Thank you, guys.
We voting on this?
So where are we at this point? It sounds like we're going to have first of all, we will get to public comment.
I had a few more comments, but certainly if there are more questions.
Why do we do that? But then I think what we're hearing too is we're going to have a revised proposal come back to us.
I wasn't actually suggesting that, but I think that the direction is pretty clear and that we can incorporate it into this contract. I think it's a matter of making some reductions in some of the numbers and increasing the Richmond numbers. But my recommendation would be that we go forward with the contract approval tonight so that we're able to get the work started rather than wait till September.
Wasn't that the purpose of this meeting?
That was the reason we're here today.
This is a special meeting for the purpose of approving this.
Okay, fair enough. Let's hear from members of the public at this point.
First, very excited, very, very excited and thrilled that we will have the level of expertise and experience that you bring. It's going to make all the difference in terms of how we embrace our customer base and develop that relationship here and in Richmond. I just have a question about, there was a comment made about not specifically asking questions about PG&E. I totally get that. But I happened to be watching television the other night, which I very rarely do, and there was the new CEO of PG&E that made the most compelling statement on a commercial. And he said, we're a company who lost our way, and we want to be your energy company, and we want to be the blue guys, or the guys in the blue trucks. And I believe that the PG&E marketing and public relations campaign is going to be a moving target. And I'm hoping that you will be able to inform the research with intelligence about what they're doing and where. And also, if we would be able to gauge at all the developing consumer response to their messaging. which I think is going to be important because they aren't going to stop. So I just thought I'd throw those things out there for consideration. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Stan Sparrow from Tiburon. My view is actually of Richmond, looking up from Tiburon. And all the time I've seen this big cloud of smoke coming from Chevron. And from my experience of going to the Richmond town meeting there, their big concern is in air quality. You wouldn't believe the pollution there. And we all share the same air, one water, one planet. That's why we're here and doing this for the greenhouse effect. I'm really passionate about that, and that's why I come to all these things. And the other big thing in Richmond, wow, 50% unemployment. Oh, I was really surprised. And also going to Richmond and talking to some of the people who were working there, wow, the safety and the crime is 7 times higher than Tiburon. 7 times higher. Wow, and we're just right across the water. That's our neighbors. It's just astounding.
I actually grew up in a family which talked about marketing research a lot. My dad worked for the Nielsen Company, and and I'm very familiar with how it works. I just want to say that I really agree with the comments about needing marketing research more for Richmond messages. I don't know if people from Washington, D.C. could really gauge the, enormous differences between Richmond and Marin, plus the fact that a lot of people in Richmond work in Marin, and it's a very complex situation that we have here. But I also want to say that I don't think that we're at a point where it's just corporate advertising or marketing that we're needing. I mean, this is a political situation. I mean, the PG&E MEA is still a political fight. One of these days we'll be, more like a corporation, but we're not there yet. We're still in a very difficult situation. And I really want to warn you about, considering marketing a neutral thing. It's not a neutral thing, and the timing makes a huge difference. And how you ask the questions and what the questions are make a really huge difference. And I think right now we're at a point where people, most people are still not that familiar with MEA, and they're just getting rolled in. There's enormous uncertainty about the rates anyway, because they're all changing. And my understanding is that our rates are going to be a little bit less than PG&E. The difference is a little bit less than it would have been a while ago. But people are going to be in confusion because their bills are going to be changing in any case. And that, I really feel like we need to let that sit for a few months and let those kinks get worked out, because otherwise we're just going to be getting the responses to that uncertainty. And I also really have to say, I can understand why people in San Francisco might not be crazy about Clean Power San Francisco, but a poll or whatever your marketing research did that said that people like PG&E, I'm sorry, I don't really buy that in a lot of ways. I think you need to go deeper than that, and I'm not just because I'm an advocate. I think that the Prop 16 vote showed that people in Northern California weren't very crazy about PG&E. There's also the San Bruno issues, and there's a lot of issues right now with PG&E that that people have. I mean, they might have issues with MEA, but mostly I think that we still have quite low visibility. But don't underestimate the damage that we can cause ourselves by having a poll that says, oh, well, people aren't that crazy about MEA. They really like PG&E. It's like, we're going to pay a lot of money for a poll like that. I really think that would be a terrible mistake at a time like this, because we're very vulnerable right now. PG&E has still got enormous marketing budgets. their energy efficiency, I mean, they're gonna roll out a whole new energy efficiency marketing program. We haven't even seen that yet, and they haven't quite regrouped since Darby left and this new guy came in, but I think that we're gonna see a lot of moves by PG&E. I mean, one of them in the proceeding right now, they are amping up their local government partnerships on energy efficiency. They want to just be everybody's friend. So those kinds of things will be some of what we're up against here in Marin. I mean, in Richmond, it's a really different story, I think, and that I think would be worth getting some information on. But I really hope that we get this in terms more of focus groups that we can use internally and not, I mean, I know there's a public agency and you can't keep things from going public, but I really think it would be a mistake to pay a lot of money and, and have people say, oh, well, I don't know about MEA, and, my rate's double. I mean, I've heard that from, people that really, are, trying to like MEA, but they think their rate's doubled. I mean, we haven't resolved those problems yet. I mean, these billing errors are continuing. They're continuing for a reason. PG&E wants people to be confused. They want people not to like us. So, the results of this poll or focus groups may just tell us that PG&E's, dirty tricks are being successful. Well, duh. And I think that, we need to put a lot more money into positive advertising, and, it does help to have some, some research on that, but I'm concerned. I didn't make the executive committee meeting. When I hear that, you're moving forward on August 6th, I mean, it's like, this is a done deal, apparently, so, but I just think that having calls go out this month, I mean, this is when people really don't, they don't know which end is up about NEA. They're just brand new. Doesn't seem quite like the right time.
All right, well, thank you, Barbara, for that input. I mean, I think the real objective here is to do the deep dive and get the kind of information you're talking about in a professional way. So,
can I just respond to one point?
Yeah.
Barbara, one of the reasons why the executive committee felt that it was important to go forward is because we are concerned about the rollout in Richmond. And the rollout's going to occur in the spring, and in order to get the information so that we can be effective, we have to start doing this now. And so that's just the timeline that we're on. And so staff and the executive committee felt it was important to get this going so that we can get a consultant like we found here to be able to get us the information so we can be effective. It's really important that the rollout with Richmond is really effective.
Well, I think it's important that the rollout here be effective first, and I think that we're moving on too quickly. I mean, I'm not opposed to, the rollout happening in Richmond, but I don't see a lot of proactive MEA marketing happening here, and I don't know, I haven't seen what the amount is on this contract, but that's really, something that I would like to see a whole lot more going on in Marin, and then, and Richmond is another story, yes.
Well, okay, and again, as we started out the conversation with, this effort is directed toward Marin as well. My view is we're at a critical time right now with the increase in customers in Marin. So, Director Collins.
Yeah, I've just spent the last year with a marketing and communication task force in Tiburon. We decided that we needed to do something about our downtown to make it better. And we marketed, we solicited, and we got 6 experts that live in our community. These are men that have run, and women that have been CEOs of companies, presidents, owners. They're marketing and communication experts. They really are home run hitters. So I've been with them for a year and learned a great deal about, since I knew nothing about it and still know very little. And the first thing that they did is their research, their homework. Dig deep, deep, deep to get the information, and then, once you have that, then address the marketing strategy and how you communicate it. So it is a process. And it seems to me that the start of the process is knowing, knowing who the other, how many left-handers do they have, how many right-handers do they have, and what does their bench look like. And so I'm really in favor of digging down and getting the information. Another item that in my own experience, I found that Marin Clean Energy's acceptance in my community also cut across political lines, extremely so. And we haven't talked about that tonight, so there's a lot to this onion to be peeled, I think. And we're in the big leagues now. This is a sound business tool, and very much in favor of it.
Okay, any further comments or questions?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Got a motion for approval of the contract. Do I have a second?
Pursuant to, based on conversations and some retooling of priorities.
Yeah,
I'll accept Director
I guess we leave that to discretion.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm
staff.
comfortable doing that, but I just want to make sure clear on the motion.
I think it's-
Absolutely. I mean, it
Not as stated in the packet.
Right.
No, so the motion is for approval with the board of directors'
Direction.
comments taken into consideration.
Yes, so the motion will reflect that, and we have a second from Director Wachtel. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That
So
matter
we'll-
carries.
Hold right there.
Can't you see a Russell?
Okay, item 7, power purchase agreement with RE Kansas LLC,
Okay,
a
so,
California-based company.
Talk about a naming problem.
so this power purchase agreement, this project, I briefed you on at last month's meeting, if you recall. We had it on the agenda for approval then, and then there were some few last minute tweaks that we had to make during negotiations. So we presented that as information only, but we have the PPA finalized, and so tonight we're recommending that you approve the contract. So since I already went through much of this information, I thought I would just tonight briefly recap that and then talk a little bit about what has changed from the PPA that you saw last month. And then to the extent that you have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer them. So just a little background on this particular project. This is a proposed, it's in development, solar photovoltaic facility located in Central Valley, California. It is a project that will be under contract to one of the investor-owned utilities starting in 2018. The IOU in this case indicated to the developer, which is Recurrent Energy, that they didn't have a need for the power until 2018. Recurrent approached MEA, recognizing that they could develop the project much sooner than that, so they approached MEA to see if MEA would be interested in a short-term power purchase agreement that would kick in from the time that the project's online to the 2018 date when the contract with the investor-owned utility would become effective. So we looked at that and realized that that would fit well with MEA's needs as the contract with SENA falls off. There's going to be additional need for renewable power that MEA has, and so it seemed to be a good fit. And so we decided to negotiate with Recurrent, and so the PPA for tonight is the fruit of those negotiations. A little bit about Recurrent. They're headquartered in San Francisco, so it's a U.S.-based company. They are an affiliate, or actually a subsidiary of Sharp Corporation, wholly owned subsidiary of Sharp Corporation, and they're actually the global development arm for Sharp's PV business. So Sharp's a real prominent PV module manufacturer. Recurrent develops projects on behalf of Sharp. So in regards to the counterparty, the developer itself, staff is very comfortable with Recurrent. They have a real good track record They've developed, they've got operational projects in California, either operating or in development of about 150 megawatts. And they did the Sunset Reservoir project over in San Francisco. So they're a well-regarded developer. The project itself it's known as RE Kansas. It's located, or it will be located, in the city of Lemoore, which is down in Kings County. It will be a 20 megawatt single axis tracking PV array. The amount of power that it'll produce is roughly just shy of 50,000 megawatt hours annually. So that's enough power to provide the annual needs of about 8,000 of MEA's customers, just from this one project. The contract itself will be for 2 years or perhaps a little bit longer. The way that the contract is structured is that there's a guaranteed commercial operation date of January 1, 2016. So if the project comes online in accordance with that, then the PPA would run for 2 years, 2016 and 2017, and then terminate at the end of 2017. There's an opportunity, if the project is constructed ahead of that, within certain time parameters, that MEA would take the power as soon as January 2015. So it's potentially a 3-year deal, but nominally speaking, it's a 2-year deal. The change that I wanted to talk about relative to the PPA that we had last month is it's related to this issue of full deliverability status of the project, and some ways to mitigate the risks around that, and I'll explain what I'm talking about there. So in order for this project to provide capacity as a product, and which is something that MEA needs to meet capacity requirements, resource adequacy requirements, the CAISO, the California Independent System Operator, has to study the project and essentially verify or determine that the power can be delivered, and if under different conditions on the system. And it's possible. So the CAISO does these deliverability studies, and as a result of those studies, the CAISO could determine that certain transmission system upgrades are necessary, and there would be a price tag associated with that. So with this particular project, the full deliverability study is scheduled to be completed in December of this year. So there's some uncertainty as to what those potential upgrade costs would be. So the way that Recurrent is mitigating that is they've negotiated with us the right to substitute for this project. If the upgrade costs come in greater than expected, they could substitute one of 6 other projects that have been pre-approved by MEA if you confirm this agreement, and that are described in the agreement itself. So that's the provision that was sort of still in play last month, and that we've now come to agreement on. In all likelihood, the project would be RE Kansas, but Recurrent would have an opportunity to declare essentially by June of 2014 that it's one of these 6 other projects. They're all very similar. They're all 20 megawatt, in one case 19 megawatt PV projects in the Central Valley, and all in very similar stages of development. So that's the change. In regards to our recommendation, we do recommend approving this contract. We see it as a very good fit for MEA's portfolio needs. It's a very good price. This actually will be the lowest price California-based renewable contract that MEA has done. It's a very attractive price, and we're very comfortable with the developer and Recurrent. So for all those reasons, we recommend approval. Happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks, John. Any questions, Director Bragman?
If we get kicked to a secondary project, does that affect the time frame, or could we get a longer term?
Oh, now, none of the other provisions of the PPA would be impacted by an alternate site. So there's still, it would be the same guaranteed commercial online date, that January 2016 date, that the project would have to be delivering to MEA, and it would be the same term. This is a parallel provision, this alternative site that is in the utility contract. So they're being negotiated essentially in parallel. The both, from what we're hearing from our current utility, is going to execute their agreement with Current tomorrow.
John, is there a benefit to MEAs having the right to elect which of the six would want to step up?
The benefit really is in giving us greater assurance that we'll get the capacity value from the project.
Would we want to pick and choose which one?
You know, we're pretty well indifferent to the various sites. They, from an operational point of view, these are pretty much the same type of project.
Any other questions? Members of the public on this item? Okay, bringing it back to the board. Any further discussion? Ready to make a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good work, John. Okay, item